All right, good evening, Facebook family. It is 9 o'clock Monday night, time for Pajama Praise. Listen, man, I'm glad that you are here with us tonight. Let us know you're here with us. Listen, we have a great special guest tonight, Dr. Herbert Vincent Ricardo Piedro Jones. And listen, man, he has an incredible story. I was on the phone with him a couple of hours on Saturday. Oh my God, he was sharing his story. And so tonight he's going to share his story. He has an incredible story. And I want you to hear it. We're going to give him time to talk tonight. Listen, he is on the East Coast. And so it is 9:01 here. It is 10:01 there.
Yes.
And so we won't try to keep you up too long, Dr. Herbert.
Listen, you got to remember, I'm a musician, so these are our working hours.
That's right. That's right. But, man, we're going to try to get as much out of you as possible. Catrice Reed, I see you there. With Loving Yourself Inside and Out Ministry, incredible ministry. They do great things with young people, serving the community. She's going to celebrate 8 years of ministry.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. My cousin, Sandra K. Jackson, thank you for joining us and supporting us. Sister Sheila Bryce, thank you so much for joining us. Sister Lisa Vaughn, I see you there. Thank you for joining us. I know so many others will be on with us. And so, Dr. Jones, will you give us a word of prayer before we get going tonight?
Absolutely. Father God, we thank you for this day and for this time. And we pause now to say thank you for blessing us to once again to assemble, to talk, to discuss, to share, be glorified in our efforts, God. And we thank you for this platform and thank you for the visionary behind this platform. God, we offer you all of the glory. We offer you all of the praise. It is done in the matchless name of Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Again, thank you, Dr. Herbert Jones, for joining us tonight. We have some others on with us. My classmate, Sister Jackie Foster Kelton. Listen, Jackie, we are still in prayer for you and our condolences in the passing of your brother, Pastor Keith Foster. I know you all laid him to rest this past weekend. Thank you for being on with us tonight, and thank you for being a great supporter. Brother Albert Joe Reed of the Killeen chapter of the Gospel Music Workshop of America, a great supporter. Thank you for joining us. And so, listen, y'all, we're going to get into the interview with Dr. Herbert Jones tonight. So, Dr. Herbert, you know what, Dr. Herbert, before we get into that, if you will, mention the passing of Dr. Margaret DeRoe's husband.
Yeah, Pop Donald DeRoe. Margaret DeRoe is one of my mentors and is like an older sister and has always been. And she's like a mentor to so many others across the country and around the world. But her husband, Donald, transitioned this weekend. So we'd like to keep Dr. DeRoe and the family in prayer.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Jones. So Doctor, if I call you Dr. Herbert and Dr. Jones, I normally call you Dr. Herbert. And so this is for the Facebook family.
Herbert's fine.
All right, Dr. Herbert did. All right, so tell us where you were born.
I was born in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm a Southern transplant to the East Coast.
Okay. All right. Albert Joe done already started up, Dr. Jones. He said, Fran O.C. All right, Albert Joe, don't be cutting up.
Can't help all this light behind me. That's why.
And so you were born in Jackson, Mississippi. All right. So tell us, what was it like growing up in Jackson?
It wasn't at the time. I come from a civil rights family, and there were three things that I knew growing up: church, school, and civil rights. And we were fortunate enough to have an exceptional school district, the Jackson Public School District, and especially as it relates to extracurricular activities and the arts. And so they put the monies there. You know, I was fortunate enough to attend an outstanding school that had 6,000 students.
Oh, wow.
All the way. You know, I went through Samuel Manuel Brinkley High School. It started with Samuel Manuel Brinkley Elementary School, and then it was the elementary, middle school, and the high school in one school. And then the population got real large, and so they built a middle school, which was Mary Morrison Elementary and Junior High School, and they split the attendance. Elementary at Samuel Manuel Brinkley during the morning hours, and the high school 10th through 11th, 12th grades in the afternoon. And then they built another school on Livingston Road, which became the second Brinkley High School. So that therefore the original Brinkley became Walton Elementary, which is still in existence to this day. And the Brinkley High School was then 7th through 12th grades. Then they built another Brinkley because the population was so large, and the second Brinkley became the middle school, 7th through 9th, and then the Brinkley on Albemarle Road, which still exists to this day, was the 10th through 12th grade school.
Okay. So y'all had between 5,000 and 6,000 students?
There were 1,275 students in my senior class.
Oh, wow.
That gives you an idea how large this it was a 5A district school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
so
60s, now we're talking back in the 60s. So, you know, that's history. That's history.
Right. And so in your school, tell us about the music program. Were you already into music by then?
Absolutely. I learned to read music in second grade. Ernestine Green, who was an exceptional music teacher. She loved teaching. She loved children, and she loved working with students who were gifted and talented. She taught us everything. And I learned to read music starting with, at that time, the tonette, the little black tonette. And my love for music came, I guess, in my mother's womb, because I don't know anything else other than the arts and academia growing up, and to this day. I always knew that I was going to be in the academy, and I was going to be in music. So I learned that, as I mentioned, second grade, and was in the elementary and middle school honor choirs, and then when I went to high school, Mrs. Celia Williams Carr, the late Mrs. Celia Williams Carr, who was my mentor and is the reason that I am in music to this day, heard me sing with the Voices of Faith on a television program. We were doing excerpts from Amal and the Night's Visitors. And I sang the role of Amal. And she had a standard that she never allowed you to audition for the Brinkley High School choir until you were 9th grade. But she heard me sing, and she sent William Robinson, who was an incredible baritone, to find me. She sent him to the principal's office to find out where I was, and she had him to bring me to the choir room. And she said she had heard me on the television program with the Voices of Faith, and she was going to break her own record, and that was to have me to audition for her in 8th grade for the Brinkley High School choir. And from 8th grade on, I was with Mrs. Carr. In the end of my sophomore year, the beginning of my sophomore year, I became her student conductor and her assistant, and was that until I graduated from high school.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Herbert. Now, was anybody in your family in music?
That's interesting. You should ask that question. I get that question a lot. My dad used to say this. He said, I was the only one of his children. I grew up as an only child, even though I had sisters and brothers. They were much older. I was born to older parents. My dad said only thing musical about him, he couldn't even play the radio without getting statics. He said it definitely was from God, that he didn't get it from his dad. And my mom appreciated it, but she wasn't a musician. On my mom's side of the family, however, are musicians, and so that it skipped my other sisters and brothers and came to me.
And so when we were when I talked with you on Saturday, you mentioned the Ed Bishop show. Tell us about that.
That is the show on which not only did Brinkley High School Choir appear, but across the state, the Ed Bishop, who was an employee of the Hendricks Graduate School road rental place. He also was a lover of the arts and had a television show back during those years, the 60s, on WLBT and WJTV in Jackson, Mississippi. And he would always feature artists of some sort on his show. And we meaning the Brinkley High School Choir was featured there. The dance troupe was featured on there. The Voices of Faith were featured on there. Voices of Faith was a community choir founded by Randolph Watson, who retired from teaching music and still lives in Mississippi. But that was the show that highlighted and showcased African American talent. Okay.
And so so during the time that you were in school and there was the civil rights era, and so I asked you about Medgar Evers. Tell us about Medgar Evers.
Medgar Evers was the field secretary of the NAACP and was a dear, very close friend of my oldest brother, Clement. Clement also was the chairman of the deacon board of his church, but he and Medgar, and he was very, very much actively involved with the movement. As I mentioned, my family were in civil rights. And Medgar was very personable, but he also had two daughters that were like sisters to me, and that was Sheila and Nisi. And the Medgar Evers Freedom Choir, which was later name was changed later on to the Voices of Faith. We did all of the music for all of the mass meetings that were held in Jackson. And that name was given us, that was the official name of the choir, the Medgar Evers Freedom Choir. And so that was our relationship with Medgar and the entire Evers family. Now, he had a brother, Charles, who became the first African-American mayor in a Mississippi town. And he was mayor of Fayette, Mississippi for a long time.
And so at some of the civil rights meetings with some of the national figures, come to town
all the time. And it is interesting and important to note that all mass meetings, to show you the role of the African American church in the movement and with the movement, all of the mass meetings were held in the church. The boycotts, the sit-ins, all of those were planned at those mass meetings, and the ministerium sanctioned those. So if the ministerium sanctioned a boycott, the churches, the African American community did that, boycotted. If there was a march, it was planned at those mass meetings in the church. The church sanctioned those. The marches took place. Were that to be the case today, the church stand on and takes stand on social issues, social injustice issues, inequality, reconciliation, racial injustice.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Herbert. So with the civil rights movement going on, and even today, I mean, we got a bunch of issues all across this country.
Absolutely.
And so with the music, because you all, before the speakers would come up,
Mm-hmm.
you all would set the atmosphere. Tell us about that.
It was like, and it was an atmosphere that was filled with excitement, that was pregnant with expectation, uh, filled with jubilation, filled with praise, even worship. Because you have to remember when you get our culture together in a setting like that, you can't help but have some kind of praise and worship going on. So the Mega Herbert's Freedom Choir was a part of that. And you also have to remember that by nature, we tend to be a singing people. So you had the masses, the lay, the learned alike, all gathered together, singing "We Shall Overcomes," and ain't nobody gonna turn me around. The spirituals and the gospels being meshed into the movement itself. The music of the movement was a movement.
Right. And so let me ask you this, and I guess this is where I'm going with this. So even today, as we go through our issues, with race relations, injustices, people getting killed, how can church music or music in general possibly play a role in even today's events?
Let's look at it this way. During the time of slavery, the Africans who were brought to the country and on the plantations, what kept them strong and going not only was the prayer, but of course the singing, being able to sing and sing their way out of depression and depressive states and oppressive states, sing themselves happy. The work songs that were used in the fields that helped the day pass. When they gathered for worship, the sharing of the singing that to the point of taking them away from their current situation to a place of being liberated and being free, if you please, in the music itself. Music hath charm to soothe the savage breast. Look at Saul and David. David in that harp, that evil spirit, was congealed because of music. It's therapeutic. Therapeutic.
And so, man, I think, and we're going to talk more about music and how music is influential and how music has been a combining force, and that's not the word I want to use, a force that has joined oppositions. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to ask you about your doctorate in a minute, and you're going to talk about talk about that. But listen, let's go back to so after you went through high school, then you earned a scholarship. Tell us about that.
Yeah, during my high school years, the Jackson State University, Tougaloo College would have. Jackson State University is the major university in the capital city at the time, and still is. And Tougaloo College would have high school days. And those high school days, on those high school days or during those high school days, there would be opportunities for people to talk with professors and to audition for scholarships. And one of the things that Mrs. Carr had prepared us always for was always being able to go to those high school days and then audition for possibly to receive scholarship. So that my ninth grade year, I went to Tougaloo College. At the time, Dr. Ariel Lovelace was chair of the choral program there. That's where the late Dr. Walter Turnbull. So I grew up listening to Turnbull and Charlene Catchins Johnson, the soprano, and Patricia Johnson from Memphis, Tennessee. All of them were at Tougaloo. And Dr. Robert Honeysuckle from the Met. All of them. Those are product of Tougaloo College. And so I auditioned for Dr. Lovelace, and at the time I did the recitative aria from the Messiah. But by the coming of the Lord, and then thus saith the Lord of hosts, and at ninth grade, mind you, and Dr. Lovelace went through all of I think there were 12 or 13 of us who auditioned, and then when he would call you back, if he was really considering you, he would call you back and ask you to do something else or sing something again from that piece. And so he called me. He said, the baritone from Brinkley. Mrs. Carr's student, I want you to go back to the beginning of the Thus saith the Lord for me and sing that. And I sang that. And out of that was birthed my first scholarship to college when I was ninth grade. He awarded
Walter Turnbull, Harlem Boys Choir.
Yes. He's a product of Tougaloo.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Well, the first time I went to New York, we had an opportunity to go to the Harlem Boys Choir School. And one of the things we quickly learned that the Harlem Boys Choir School had girls there too.
Yeah, surprise to everybody. Yeah.
But man, he was a phenomenal.
All growing up, hearing the Turnbulls, the Charlene Catchins Johnsons, the Patricia Johnsons, the Robert Honeysuckles, growing up hearing them, that just imagine a younger aspiring musician, vocalist, and choral person even, because Tougaloo's choir was phenomenal. Growing up, that was our foundation. That was what we knew, that we got that Monday through Friday in school, but we also got it on the weekend at our churches, because the same teachers we had Monday through Friday were those same people that were in the music ministry and the Sunday school on Sunday.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't know anything else but the spirit of excellence.
Right.
Across the board.
So you didn't have an opportunity to slack.
No, that wasn't my nature. I was always blessed to have a spirit of wanting to always be excellent. I didn't. Celia Williams Carr, the Mr. Sutton, who was our principal, was the same way. He instilled that into all of the students that were at Brinkley. I was blessed to be a part of the accelerated academic program. So I graduated from high school early, but I didn't know anything else but excellence. I didn't choose to strive for anything else but excellence. And then in the community choir with Randolph Watson, he commanded excellence and demanded excellence from the community choir. Yeah.
Wow. And so you got your scholarship. So when you got to your first years of college, so were you a music major?
Yes.
And
yes.
Did you have a minor, or was music the whole thing?
That was minor was music. That was it. I was vocal performance all the way.
Okay.
All the way, yes.
All right. And so once you finished undergrad, then what?
When I finished undergrad, right after college, I got a job offer to teach middle school and part-time at the high school. Okay. So I taught middle school for 2 years, as a matter of fact, in the poorest region of the Mississippi area, and that's the Delta region. I taught in a small town known as Falcon, Mississippi, out from Marks, Mississippi. I loved teaching in that area. Those students were wonderful. The parents were wonderful, to the point that during Christmas holidays, instead of going back home, after my first year going back home, many of the parents wanted me to spend Christmas time with them. So I would spend a day with this parent and the child, and then the next couple of days with that child and parent. That's the kind of relationship that they had with me and I had with them, but I loved it. And so after those 2 years I taught in the Delta, I got the fellowship offer, along with 3 other students, to do a 2-year master's program in 1 year, an intense program in 1 year at Jackson State University. And I did that and received my degree. That first master's is in clinical counseling and guidance and counseling, clinical counseling, psychology, and guidance and counseling.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So how did you get into that area?
Well, I was always interested in the mind. So I was going to put my focus into music therapy, because I did a lot of work with the Oakley Training School at the time, which was a school for the problemed boys and girls, and used music in all of my counseling sessions with them, all of my interview sessions with them. I had one group that I used music in the background, and then the second group, no music at all, and compared the reaction and interactions that took place with music. But I was always in performance, always doing the whole conducting aspect as well.
So what did you do with those case studies?
That was my thesis.
Okay.
That was my thesis. Yes, that was my thesis.
All right. And so once you completed that degree, and that degree came from which university?
Jackson State University. And I finished the degree in the spring of 1974, and I was hired by Jackson State that August of 74 on the staff in the Division of Student Services and Upward Bound, to be there, develop their music area, the Upward Bound Choir, and to serve as a counselor.
So do they still have choirs with the Upward Bound program?
Now I know that in a few years back in the Mississippi, they still were doing it, because they would have the Upward Bound retreats every summer, and there were competitions between the different Upward Bound programs during those retreats, and one of those competition areas was choir and music. And of course, we would always be victorious. I'm serious. Because we had about, I think the number was 117, 120 students from across the state of Mississippi. And many of those students were in band and in choir at their individual schools. And so we were just able to have a great group of singers, great group of dancers and actors. And one of the other staff persons was an organist / pianist, and so she was always my accompanist, and for the entire time that I worked at Jackson State with Project Upward Bound. And so we just always worked to have an outstanding program, academic as well as musically.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Herbert. Now, how did you get to Morehouse?
Yeah, okay. I was both between Alcorn State and Morehouse. Now, every summer from my high school, let me get the history behind that. Every summer I was in a choir camp at Jackson State University. And that choir camp was Mr. Raymond I. Johnson was the choir director at Jackson State at the time, director of choral activities. And every summer, Mr. Johnson and Dr. Wendell Whalum would be at the over the camp.
Mhm.
And so my introduction and my exposure to that level of excellence as it relates to choral music was with Dr. Johnson and Mr. Johnson at the time, and with Dr. Whalum. So that was my introduction. High school, going to college, did not pursue the Tougaloo College award, but went to study with Dr. Frank Perry at Alcorn State, Frank Perry Jr. at Alcorn State University. Phenomenal baritone, outstanding academician, and at the same time, wanted to work with and study with Dr. Whalum. So there was an exchange. I was able to study with Dr. Perry, part Dr. Whalum, part. Go back, Dr. Perry, part Dr. Whalum. So that's my Morehouse connection. And then, of course, the degree came from, and I was able to get the degree from both institutions.
Okay. So how did that work that you were able to get the degree from both institutions?
It's on paper. That's it.
Okay. They agreed to it.
That's right.
Okay. Wow. And so one of the personalities I asked you about at Morehouse was our homeboy,
Smith.
Mr. Finest Eugene Smith.
Yeah, phenomenal tenor. Absolutely. Yeah, very, very dear friend. Was a member of our voice faculty of the academic division of GMWA.
Right.
And as you know, was what we call one of the biggest clowns ever, would keep you in stitches all the time, but was an incredible individual. Yeah. Very, such a loss to the.
Right. And he loved GMWA and the
GMWA, yes.
division. And so you went on through Morehouse and earned another degree. and so then you went on into ministry or regards to you're an ordained minister, right?
I'm an ordained minister of music.
Okay.
An ordained minister. We're one of the few ordained ministers of music in the country. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And let me share with you that journey. I always, as I said early on, I always had the desire to do nothing but academics and the church and civil rights, and be actively involved in civil rights in some kind of way. But I always knew that I would never not be in the church in music. Never not be in the church. I'm just a church child. My uncle was a pastor. Uncle George was a pastor, and that's who everybody says that I'm like, is my Uncle George. So I guess that's the pastoral side of me. My mom had 7 sisters and 2 brothers, Uncle George and Uncle Robert. Uncle Robert was the one that had 21 children.
Okay.
And now that side of the family is musical.
Okay.
But I always, there was always this internal wrestling for more, as with, especially when I'm involved with music and in the church environment. I love worship. I'm a hymn lover, as you know. That's my love. And there was always this wrestling inward. And so I was, while being employed at Jackson State University, that wrestling, and I was minister of music at the Greater Mount Calvary Baptist Church down the street from Jackson State at the same time. And there was this bubbling just in my spirit, in my head. And I just kept praying for godly insight and direction. And the day that I was supposedly off on Mondays, but I was never off. I was always on campus in the office doing something. But this particular Monday, I told the office that I was just going to go home, and I just couldn't pull it together for some reason. I went home. Now let me try to describe my apartment. I was on the set. My apartment was on the second floor of the building, and as you ascend the stairwell and you go down the walkway to the apartment, the front doors were slide glass doors to your living room. The regular door, and then patio doors.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's glass. You go into the living room. There's the wall. There's a hallway. Go down the hallway. Kitchen off to the right. Bathroom off to the left. Go down the hall all the way to the end. Bedroom, because it was a one-bedroom apartment. Now, wall. There were no windows there, except there was one window in the bedroom up. So there were no windows where sunlight and all that could come. And I'm a lover of rocking chairs. Rocking chairs.
Okay.
So I found this rocking chair one year, and I bought that rocking chair. So I kept that rocking chair, had it in my bedroom next to my bed. So that would be where I would sit and read, and unless I wanted to go over to the desk in the bedroom. So I was in the rocking chair, and you know how you're at a state where you're like between almost sleep and almost awake, and you can look around you, but you're still like in la la land is what I call it. And I heard Herbert, and I was, I'm there, and then I heard Herbert a little louder, and then I heard Herbert the third time, and I immediately my response was, "Yes, Lord." Glenn, as I looked up, there was this beam of, now mind you, this is all brick wall, this beam of light shining nowhere else, just on me in that rocking chair. That beam of light, brightest beam of light. I knew what that was.
Right.
That was the voice of God. That was my call. That was my answer. Now, mind you, I had also been looking at programs across the country that had Master of Divinity with concentration in the arts of some science, specifically music. I was looking for sacred music. And I applied to the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, and that was that Monday. That Wednesday, I got a letter from Pittsburgh Theological Seminary saying that I had been admitted to the seminary and full ride.
Oh, wow, wow.
Call there was the preparation. There was, and so I finished out that year at Jackson State. That was 1979. And in September of 80, I went to Pittsburgh Theological Seminary and pursued the Master of Divinity. And I'm the first to get the Master of Divinity from the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary with concentration in theology, music, and the arts.
Oh, wow.
And the first and only African American, because the next group of people who did it was Derek and Milana Nelson Armica, and their concentration was in sacred dance. They were a husband and wife team.
Well, so you had a Samuel and a Paul experience.
Absolutely so. Absolutely. Yeah. You'd have to experience it. I'm telling you, there is no way you can explain this beam of light coming through concrete walls. It had to come through 3 rooms, and there were no windows.
Oh, wow.
There were no windows.
I think often we, when we get in music, sometimes we'll rest our hat there and say, well, I'm going to do this. This is what the Lord called me to do, and I'm going to stay right here. And, and the Lord has other things that he wants us to do. And seemingly you were open to the voice of the Lord. And
the preparation was before I knew I was being prepared for it, because that from an early age of having the spirit of excellence
Mm-hmm.
in the natural.
Mm-hmm.
That was the spirit that I bring to the spiritual, and that is the church, because we know that God is a God of wrath and mercy and love and grace, and even in his wrath he's still good, but
Mm-hmm.
he's a God of excellence.
Right,
and
right.
and so therefore we should offer him, go before him with the spirit of excellence. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I command of my singers and the band and people with whom I work and people with whom I minister in the church, in the ministry. That's the spirit that we should bring.
You know what, Dr. Herbert, Dr. Patrick Bradley
Yes, my brother. Yeah.
said this about you the other day. He said that you're the same everywhere. And so let me add an editorial to the term excellence. I think you, with the spirit of excellence, and the spirit of excellence creates excellence, you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
And so even though they're one and the same thing, they're two separate things, you
Yeah.
know, because
Yeah.
some people are excellent at their craft, but they don't have an excellent spirit, you know.
Spirit, absolutely.
And so, you know, since I've known you from GMWA, you know, you've been the same, you know. I mean, you've displayed a spirit of excellence.
Hallelujah.
And so Dr. Herbert, this big word that I'm getting ready to use, I mean, you know, you are a lover of terms, and this term, ethnomusicology.
Yeah.
Ethnomusicology. What in the world is that?
It's the study of a culture through its music. um, I was I was made the offer to pursue PhD studies in ethnomusicology with the late Nathan Davis, the jazz saxophonist who's developed and grew and chaired the Department of Ethnomusicology at the University of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And in that department was one of the world's top scholars in ethno, the late J. Kwabena Nkatia. And while being Nathan's graduate assistant, and having been chosen by Dr. Nkatia to assist him, my first year at the university, the chair of the department at the time was the organist of the university, the late Dr. Robert Sutherland Lloyd. Phenomenal organist, just incredible. And I actually used him as when I used with the concert choir. But my first year, Dr. Lloyd called me one evening and said, "Herb, I know that you get into the office early every morning, and I'd like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow morning around 9 and to talk with you about a couple of things." And I thought, okay, what is it now? So that next morning went in, and Dr. Lloyd said, well, you might know that we're not renewing the contract of the director of choral activities of the Hines Chapel Choir here at Pitt. Well, you have to understand, Hines Chapel Choir is the creme de la creme. The Hines Chapel Choir is to the University of Pittsburgh what the concert singers is to Ole Miss, and that's the top group. And so I said, well, no, I didn't know. I had no need to know that. He said, well, the faculty met and unanimously decided that we'd like for you to take over the Hines Chapel Choir and the choral program for one semester while we conduct a national search. And that was like December. No, that was like October, because I went to the Christmas concert of the choir. And, it wasn't announced in the department. To my knowledge, it wasn't announced in the department. But some of the students had gotten a little buzz that I was going to be taking the choir over starting in January until they did a national search. So when I went to the concert to hear what the choir was like and see what was there and with whom I would be working starting in January. And they, at the time, were performing the Arthur Honegger's Christmas oratorio with the symphony, with the orchestra.
Mm.
And it was very obvious that some things chorally were not in place like they needed to be. I'll put it that way. And so in January, I started with the choir and had the choir's tradition was to have a fall and spring concert. The Christmas concert was the fall concert, very well attended, thousands of people in Heinz Chapel, and the spring concert. And there were always a Friday night concert and a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon concert. I did the Friday night concert. Sunday afternoon concert, the voice faculty, the music faculty came to the Friday night concert. There were people at the Sunday concert. Monday morning, they disbanded the search committee. So I became the first graduate student in the history of the University of Pittsburgh to be interim director of choral activities and the first and only African American again. A God thing. First and only African American to head that program of the world-renowned Heinz Chapel Choir.
Oh, wow. Man, so your gift made a room for you, or made room for you, on that faculty.
Thank God. And always, Glenn, I've always made sure that people know that I am where I am because I stood on and continue to stand on the shoulders of Celia Williams Carr and Randolph Watson and Dr. Wendell Whalum and Mr. Raymond Johnson, and Dr. Frank Perry, those people who were the trendsetters during my formidable years as a musician and as an academician.
Wow. Dr. Patrick Bradley says that you are our mentor.
He has always honored me by saying that. That's my fraternity brother.
And you are, we haven't gotten to this point yet, but at the Gospel Music Workshop of America, you play a great leadership role. Dr. Charles Reese is our dean.
Yeah.
He is our dean. He is our leader, but you serve under him.
Yeah, I represent the dean. I'm his executive assistant, and quite another scholar, another learned man, and my friend. And it is always humbling and always a privilege to represent Dean Reese and the academic division, a division that I love dearly.
Well, since I've been a part of the academic division, I think it's been about 17 years now. You've been that face along with Dean Reese. You're the go-getter. You're the
yeah.
And I don't use this term loosely. You're the errand boy.
I wouldn't go.
Herbert, go fix this. Herbert, go take care of this.
That is true.
Herbert, what's going on? What's going on with that?
Yeah.
I don't know, Dean. I'll find out.
Yeah.
But you play an integral role in keeping that machine moving.
But is that not what we should be about? Having someone to be able to do that.
Sure.
That does not take away from the person in that position, that leadership top position. That only makes that person in that position look good. It's our job. We have to be about our Father's business, or else we have no business here.
That's right. And so, man, we appreciate all that you do, even in that capacity. And so, tell us about the University of North Dakota. How did you get way up? How did you get way up to North Dakota? What were you doing up there?
Well, I was at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. I was director of at the time, the name was Inspirational Singers, but it's now Inspirational Chorale. And Dr. Jeffrey Matlock is my dear friend, is the conductor there. But while there, the offer came from the University of North Dakota, from at the time, Dean Lillian Elsinger, who later became a vice president. But they were looking for two things. At the time, the only African American cultural center was on the campus of the University of North Dakota. And they were looking for the ethnomusicologist in the Department of Music was retiring, and they wanted someone to teach, needed someone to teach also the ethno courses in music. And so I happened to be able
So, Dr. Herbert, let me interrupt you. So tell us elaborate a little bit more on the ethnomusicology.
Break it up. You want to look at the ethnic aspect of it. So we look at it's world music, the study of world music, but specifically an ethnic group of people. And when you look at ethnomusicology, you're going to study all of the world's musics. You're going to study Chinese music and Japanese music and African music, of course. And, with my being able to be a graduate assistant to one of the world's top scholars in ethno, recognized worldwide, Kwabena Nkatia, the writer of the book about on ethnomusicology, that's literally sitting at the feet of the masters to study the culture through its music.
Wow. Interesting, man. That is something that is needed, very much needed in education, that you don't hear very much about. I know right now a lot of educational institutions are hiring people in diversity, because, in music, in choral music especially, we've studied the European style of music and put a great emphasis on that. And you had to be able to be proficient in that style of music to graduate with your music degree. But yet you have all these other genres or styles of music that have been ignored,
I say often that I don't separate my Eurocentric training from my Afrocentric training. I actually mesh the two. Afrocentric, Eurocentric, and in the middle gospel. So I bring both of those to the gospel music as well. So therefore, that whole spirit of excellence that is permeated throughout with your Eurocentric training should also be permeated and meshed throughout your Afrocentric training, as well as gospel music. We talk about having the burning but no learning, or having the learning and no burning. Well, you got to have both of those. And the Holy Ghost is intelligent. Selah.
Right. Wow. And so, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but tell us some more about your experience at the University of North Dakota.
Yes, yeah. And so, being there, I became the director of the Arabelle Thompson Black Cultural Center, and professor of music in the School of Music at University of North Dakota. I loved teaching at the University of North Dakota. Now, put a comma there. I was the only African American faculty and administrator at the University of North Dakota. But there were some African American students there. When I went there, from the undergraduate school all the way through to the School of Aviation, because the University of North Dakota has the School of Aviation, where the Northwest airline pilots were trained on that campus. There were 50 African American students out of 14,000, 15,000, 17,000. 50 when I went there. 50. That's literally a drop in the bucket. And then because of my working and assisting in the Dean of Students office and working with the Greek organizations on campus via the Dean of Students office, I was on every committee that was there, that was actively involved in the community, actively involved in higher ed and diversity, and as well as on the recruitment team. So I went to every recruitment conference that that the university attended, because the university, remember, Northwest Airline pilots, so the university had its own Learjet. They flew us everywhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so when after the second year via recruitment, now put a comma there as well, Minnesota and North Dakota have a reciprocity.
Okay.
Relates to the University of North Dakota. So students who come from Minnesota would not have to do that out-of-state fee at the time. So you were able to pull from them and pull from the other areas. So when I left the University of North Dakota, going to Alcorn State University, there were a little better than 200 students, 200 African-American students at the university.
Okay. So did you go to church when you were in North Dakota?
Yes, on the Air Force Base, which is another story, because at the Air Force Base, now, if you don't know the Grand Forks, North Dakota area, North Dakota is predominantly Sioux Native American area. So you talk about Native American, so you wouldn't have a black community there. The black community in Grand Forks, North Dakota, were 6 African Americans who retired from the Air Force Base and who just happened to still live there and not move. That's the black community at the time. But when you go 14 miles away to the Air Force Base, then you will have that, of course, because of the military. And so I was asked to be over the music for the afternoon worship service. In the morning was the Catholic service, and then they had another service, and then the regular mixed service, which was predominantly African American, and that was the gospel service.
Right. Yeah, and so North Dakota, that was also the national North Dakota at that air base. That was the military top command for. I can't remember what it's called, but I remembered that. Yeah.
Yes. North Dakota, and then if you go up to Minot, then you would have the other base there as well.
Right. So, well, man, that was an incredible experience.
Absolutely.
And so from there you went to
Alcorn State University.
Alcorn. And so, and I know you're going to talk about Alcorn, but I want you to also talk about the liturgical dance. That's something we've not discussed. Tell us about that.
I've always been in the arts, but I was a member of, in high school, we had the YMCA and YWCAs growing up in the African American community were big on having those weekend classes and weekend experiences for children and for students. And so they had a very strong artsy area. Not only did they have the vocal artsy area, but they had the instrumental and the dance area. So I was always interested in dance and was always involved in dance of some because I was in band as well. And then on campus was the Dunbar Dramatics Guild and Dance Guild. And I was a member of the Dunbar Dramatics Guild and Dance Guild and started studying dance, started studying modern dance and ballet. And went through every summer there was an Alvin Ailey apprentice program. We had someone who would come from the Dance Theater of Harlem down and work with the Y and work with the Dunbar Dramatics Guild and Dance Guild. And my interest in dance grew, and I started studying and studied the Martha Graham technique and the Ailey technique of dance. And I just switched partners. I had the alien and the natural, but I switched partners and had the Holy Ghost in the church. And for that training, that was again that Eurocentric and Afrocentric training was brought to liturgical / sacred dance, and I'm a member of the Sacred Dance Guild to this day. And while I was in North Dakota, by the way, since you brought that up, brought that back, my second year, I was asked by the North Dakota Ballet Company if I would choreograph a piece for them. So what I did was to choreograph a tribute to the late Alvin Ailey, his signature piece, Revelations, and they performed that that year.
Wow. And so the guild, was it? How long has the guild been around? I had never heard of it.
Oh my goodness, for years. 30 plus.
Okay.
Yeah, 30 plus years.
Wow. And so before did you do anything in dance at Alcorn, or was it mostly choral?
Well, I was director of choral activities and voice at Alcorn, but I also worked with the band. I worked with the Golden Girls, which is the dance squad of the drum majors. So that dance aspect still was there.
So Dr. Herbert, I want to play something right quick because we're moving into some of the things you're currently doing. I wanted to share this. All right. Listen, man, when I saw that video,
My goodness,
you took me back to 1982 at Worth Hill Baptist Church on the north side of Fort Worth. Man, our youth choir, we were about 70 strong, man. We sang that in our musical, man, and we churched that night. I had not heard that song since about 1984, 85. Wow.
Yeah, and that was one of the pieces from my fall concert with the Heritage Gospel Chorale of Pittsburgh, and we were doing. I programmed a tribute to different composers and arrangers, and one of them was the late Dr. Mattie Moss Clark, and so that particular arrangement is a meshing of two arrangements. The first part is Dr. Clark with a little tweaking, and the second part is a combination of the late Patrick Roche and along with Herb Jones and my accompanist Charles Rowe. That's the second part,
All right.
Which you didn't get a chance. Well, you started going into it, but you didn't get to the other part. The second half of that is a mesh of Eurocentric and Afrocentric and a little jazzy stuff in it as well. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, man, listen, man, when I heard that song last week, I played it about 6 times.
It is scored. Dr. Daniel Kaysen, my dear friend and brother, scored it for us.
Okay, so since you brought up Danny Kaysen, tell us about you,
I know where
Dan,
you're going.
and Glenn Burley. Tell us about that.
Yes, indeed. For many years, many years ago, the late Glenn Edward Burley, Dr. Daniel Mario Cason II, and Herb Jones were a workshop team
Mhm.
for many years. Glenn did the piano and theory aspect of the workshop. Daniel did the organ, and I did, of course, the vocal and choral. For years, three brothers and we are to this day. Glenn is just not here physically with us, but I miss Glenn to this day.
Right.
And Daniel and I are very close and remain doing a lot of collaborations. As a matter of fact, he and I sit on his board of directors for his school, and he and I both sit on the board of directors for the Hymns for Him conference, founded by Dr. David Allen. But for years, we were a workshop team, very strong team.
Listen, I have a hymn I'm going to send you.
Okay.
I want y'all to do it at your conference. It's
Okay.
a hymn that I wrote. Listen, Dr. Jones, you have brought up the big guns tonight. We got Dr. Mackie Spradley on with us tonight.
I have not seen her in years. I love her dearly. I love her.
Yes, Dr. Mackie Spradley is on with us. Marion P. Rogers is on with us.
Stars! My friend.
One of our Dallas chapter members, First Lady Vanita Blake, is on with us.
Okay.
My cousin, Miss Tammy Washington, Dr. Clark Joseph is on with us.
My frat.
So Taretha Jones,
that's my great grandniece from New Jersey.
Okay.
Our first son is in ballet and modern dance.
Oh wow! Okay.
Took after his great uncle.
Wow! And so, Dr. Jones, tell us, when did you start coming to the Gospel Music Workshop of America?
In my sophomore year in college, which was actually the first year of GMWA, 68.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And well, it actually, unofficially began before then, but officially then. But I started attending because of my love for gospel music. And we had a chapter that was founded in Jackson by the late Mr. Evans. And he was an advocate for chapter members attending and participating in GMWA. You can go to the nightly musicals, but you need to go register for class. Okay. So I started then, and I have been with GMWA. I moved from attending to becoming a delegate, and then taking classes, of course. And then I was brought on as faculty by the late Dr. Robert Simmons, and then became the National Academic Registrar for a number of years, and then moved from there to what at that time it was assistant deans. There were three of us, Dr. Charles Reese, Terrence Grimes, and myself, and then now to the executive assistant to the dean of the academic division, Dr. Charles Reese.
Right, I remember you working in registration. Was UL Rivers working in registration?
Yes. UL Rivers, Eula Flowers, who was like an older sister. Elise Wright from Cleveland, Ohio. All of those were all on the national academic registration team, and several others, of course. And we have a capable registrar, as you know, Irma McCain from Cleveland, Ohio.
And so, I don't know if our Facebook audience remembers, but you were on about a month. What month is this? April, back in February. Was it February? When was the board meeting? You were on with us.
Yeah.
And we talked about the gospel music workshop. I mean, there's so much that goes on there that people, when they say gospel music, people immediately start thinking about church music. and the Sunday morning choir and all of that. But we're way bigger than that.
We are, and when people when they think about gospel music, the mind goes to GMWA and it goes to Dorsey. That's what they think. But even with GMWA and with Dorsey, there are academic components. And but especially with GMWA, when you talk about GMWA and academics, you're talking about the clearinghouse for an academia for gospel music. That's our division.
Now, do you still teach the directing to class?
I haven't taught in years because of my administrative position.
Okay. Right, and so even in GMWA they have directing. I know Miss Jewel Kelly teaches directing 1. Who teaches directing 2 now?
Dr. Wise, I believe.
Dr. Raymond Wise?
Yeah, I think it's Dr. Wise. It's a cross between Wise or I believe it is Wise. It's either Wise. It's not Dr. Leach because Dr. Leach has done that, but Dr. Leach does. I think it is. I think it is Dr. Anthony Leach.
Okay.
Because Dr. Wise does the voice. Dr. Wise does the voice.
Right. And so you've been going to GMWA since its inception in '68?
You can say I'm a GMWA baby. But I'm an old GMWA baby because I'm blessed to be 71 years old. So
Right. Yeah. Well, 71 is still young. So
well, of course, yes. Yeah, when I get to be 100, I'm gonna still be young.
So tell us about Ebenezer. I mean, not Ebenezer, Bethany.
Bethany Baptist Church.
My church too in Dallas.
Yeah, I'm blessed and honored to be the minister of music. Bethany Baptist Church here in Pittsburgh, where Dr. William R. Glaze is the pastor. I have a unique position in that being the minister of music, and I direct the church choir, which is the Sounds of Worship, but I have a full staff. We have the Sunshiners, which is the children's choir. That has a staff of instrumentalists and director. And then we have the praise team, instrumentalist and director, the male chorus, instrumentalist and director, and then we have a full-fledged deaf ministry at Bethany, and they do every 5th Sunday's service. But I'm fortunate with the church choir, the Sounds of Worship. 90% of my church choir members read music, so they do. And they can do, even if they didn't read, they still going to be able to do it. They do everything, spiritual anthems, traditional.
So did you teach them to read, or did they just come there reading?
No. That's a singing church. It's always been there. 40 years ago, I went to the old church because we're in the new church. I was brought there by one of the members of the Sounds of Worship as a clinician to do a workshop with their church choir 40 years ago at Bethany. Yeah. You know how things come full circle, here I am now, the minister of music at Bethany.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so tell us about Ebenezer.
I am the assistant pastor of worship and music arts at Ebenezer Baptist Church here in Pittsburgh in the historic Hill District. That again is another musically historic church. That church has a tradition of doing the anthems and doing the spirituals and doing the traditional and contemporary gospel. Many years ago, in the Hill District of Pittsburgh, Macedonia Baptist Church, Calvary Baptist Church, Central Baptist Church, Ebenezer Baptist Church, those churches, and I did say Central. Those churches did the anthems and the spirituals and had trained ministers of music at the helm. So they did everything. God is a God of excellence.
And so, man, with your experience, I'm still stuck on this ethnomusicology. I can't let it go. I can't let it go, because I do think, and this is one of the things that Dr. Bradley and Dr. Clark Joseph and I often talk about, is that we have to keep educating, especially the church musicians, because the way music is going now,
Mhm.
there will come a time when the musicians won't be able to read the music
Mhm.
of old, and a
Well,
lot
there
of
will come a time that time is now. In
yeah.
many instances, it's now. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I
You know,
mean,
and there's excuse me for cutting you off, but there is um, in this area. I'm not, and I'm sure there may be in other areas, but in this area, there's always a coming together of the various musical genres to the worship experience, because
mhm.
we have full-fledged jazz services here.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
where you have the hymns, but it's in the style of jazz, and you have
Mhm.
readings, scriptural readings, and poetic readings between the next piece, and it's a worship service.
Mhm. Mhm. Right, right. Hmm.
It goes against the grain of we look at when Thomas Dorsey came from leaving the piano bench from playing from Mulroney going into the church. And talking about they didn't want the devil's music. They didn't want that kind of stuff up in here.
Right, right.
Look what happened up in here.
Dr. Herbert, I don't know that everybody has the gift to play some of the complicated
Absolutely.
pieces.
Absolutely.
But I do believe that every musician ought to be able to open up a hymnal and play the songs out of the hymnal. You
Now,
know?
now we don't have enough time, as you know. I get on that soapbox, and I will be there for a long time. One of the things that I do and have done and will continue to do when I'm interviewing, auditioning keyboardists, especially,
Mhm.
is after we go through the prayer time and you tell me about your spiritual walk and where you are in your relationship with God, then we go to the instrument. And the first thing I do is put the hymnal on the piano and ask you to play me the hymn as written
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
key that it's written.
Right, right, right.
Play it as written. And then I will ask you to do some other things, do me some improvisation, do me some modulatory passages, and play the same hymn in the style of a Gregorian chant,
Right, 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 right.
in the style of, and using church modes, play me the hymn.
Sure, sure.
Traditional gospel style, play me the hymn. Contemporary, play me the hymn.
Right,
Jazz, play me the hymn. Bluesy, play me the hymn.
right, right, right. Dr. Mackie Spradley is on with us tonight, and she and I worked a long time together. And one of the things that I still brag about was we had a complete music department. We did all styles of music. We did anthems and spirituals. We did Moses Hogan on Sunday morning.
Well,
Um,
why
uh,
wouldn't you? You're talking to the man here about Moses.
yeah, I mean, and we did it, and then this is the other thing, Dr. Herbert. We had a choir that was open to learning. They put in the time.
Yes.
Nowadays choirs are impatient. They want to rehearse an hour and 20 minutes,
Yeah. Oh, I talk about that often. Yeah.
and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
But we put in the time to work with the choirs. They stayed with us,
Mm-hmm.
and then they got an opportunity to see the end product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody was doing Milton Bronson, everybody was doing John P. Key,
Mm-hmm.
but you have very few that did some of the other music.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is something. Every moment we stand before our people has to be a teaching moment. Every moment.
Mhm.
Every time. If we stand before them 5 days a week, 7 days a week, every time it has to be a teaching moment. And you're talking about working with Dr. Mackey. She was in our division, academic division, for many years, but an incredible, absolutely incredible musician. Extraordinaire.
Oh yeah, yeah. She could. We use this term polish a choir.
Yeah.
She was in high demand. I mean, she was brought in to get your choir sounding well.
It's called beating them into shape.
Listen, you know what? Before we go, Dr. Herbert, so we didn't talk about your work on your dissertation and Moses Hogan. Tell us about that.
Okay, Moses was a dear friend, and I was always in awe of Moses's ability to do what he did, and that was to stand before a group of singers and not only transform them, but they transform you as you hear them and see them. And over the years, being able to work in a number of settings with Moses and then under Moses's tutelage, if you please, my interest grew greater. After I started in pursuit of my master's degree in conducting, I knew I was going on to the doctorate, and I began to think about what it was that I wanted to do. And strongly, I wanted to tell the story and to bring additional notoriety, additional exposure for and to the work and life of Moses Hogan. So I asked, can I tell you a story? And so I began to do research and to interview and to be at concerts and talk with and meet family and people whose lives he had touched, and started writing about the style of Moses Hogan, the life of Moses Hogan. And so my dissertation is the African American spiritual and gospel song, the musical contributions of Moses George Hogan, composer and arranger. And so it analyzes his several of selected pieces, and then it puts the spiritual and the historical perspective and his influence on gospel music and his involvement with gospel music and his involvement in the academy and with the academy and with all of God's peoples. You can go anywhere in the world and they do the music of Moses Hogan. So that out of that was birthed that. And as a result of that, and interviewing and talking with Dr. Samuel Edwards from California, his interest was piqued with Moses Hogan, and he started talking with the PBS people. And so there have been interviews and filmings and recordings of performances leading up that's going to be part of and based on parts of my dissertation for the PBS special documentary on Moses Hogan.
Okay. And so Moses Hogan was also a fabulous pianist.
Oh my goodness, yes. He won the Kosciuszko World Competition in piano. Yeah. Yes.
Well, so Albert Joe Reed asked a question. He said, "Are choirs lost?"
Yeah, in more ways than one. Yes. Yes. And yes. And prior to the pandemic, we had that we could see that being evidenced and manifested because you had a resurgence and an outpouring and a focus on praise teams. Not that there's anything wrong with praise teams, but that's what that focus was. So the focus was taken off of the church choirs and the choirs, and this being will never not have a choir. I will have groups out of the choir.
Right.
Will never not have choral singing.
Right. Man, that is powerful. Listen, Dr. Herbert, man, you're going to promise me right now you're going to come back, right?
Bless your heart. I would be honored to do that.
Because we've got to do a part 2. As a matter of fact, man, I've got to get you, Dr. Mackie Spradley.
Yes.
I've got to get Dr. Danny Kaysen on.
Yes.
And we've got to.
And you need to get Dr. Bishop Chantel Wright.
Okay.
From Solomon in New York City. Yes.
Okay. We will work on that.
Yes.
Because you know what, man, I think wherever music is lacking in the church, I think we have the expertise amongst us to revive. Clark Joseph. Clark, are you still on here? Clark did his dissertation on choirs.
Yes.
And so, I mean, we do need to revive. I miss the big choirs. Yeah. I miss that.
Well, with where we are with regards to the world, we have to revisit how we do the choirs. I've been asked to do be the choral director for, this year officially begins the recognition of Juneteenth as a national holiday. And so in Florida, in St. Augustine, Florida, they're doing on Juneteenth. I've been asked to come to be choral director and do this major concert rather, with members of the symphony and a large chorus, and it's going to be in the amphitheater, which can hold up to 350 people on the stage, but I'm only using 75 singers because to make sure that we have the physical distancing and that we observe the CDC regulations, but at the same time that we tell the story in song.
Right. And so we need to try to somehow just have a discussion on it, because I know the pandemic was one thing, but we're talking about pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic, that's correct. Yeah. Yes.
And so again, I think we have the expertise to kind of talk about it, not only identify what's wrong, but remedy the situation. How do we recruit choir members?
And part of that also, as we are looking at doing that, has to be that the pastors have to have buy-in. Because we in charge of the music ministry can have it, but the pastors have to have buy-in as well.
Right. And look, and we'll discuss that. We have to put everything on the table, or again, what we know as great ministry, which the choir ministry is a great and integral ministry of the early church. Well, not the early church, but when you look in the Old Testament, the Levites,
yes,
they had big choirs.
That was our job. There's a number. Massed choir is nothing new. There's a number in First and 2nd Chronicles. It says
what did you say?
288 singers. That's the massed choir, not mass. MASSED.
Okay. All right, Dr. Frison. All right, Dr. Frison.
That's my frat brother. Yes.
But listen, man, we have kept you long enough. Again, we're going to have you back.
It's been a pleasure.
This discussion, we have Dr. Willie Adams on with us, a great choir director, musician from Dallas. So many people are on with us tonight. Y'all, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Herbert Jones,
You're welcome. Thank
for
you.
staying up late tonight and sharing with us. Thank you for your leadership on the national level. Thank you to your contribution. Listen, we're going to explore ethnomusicology. We're not going to let that die. We're going to talk about that. You know, if there's going to be diversity, you know, in education, that's an important part of that. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Again, there will be a part 2 with you. Thank you, Facebook family, for joining us tonight. We will see you all again here next week, 9 o'clock p.m. here on Pajama Praise. Listen, y'all be safe. Y'all have a good night. Good night, Dr. Herbert Jones.
Brother.
And again, thank you.
Thank you.